Okay, and we're back after a little bit of a delay, and I had a audio headset issue here I had to work out. So let's go ahead and continue the Web Dev Essentials. I'm going to pick up where we left off. We're working on the Notepad still. I have this hot list tab. I have this Teams tab, and you could ignore this first new to tab. We don't really need that right now. So we're going to continue with the hot list. What I want to go ahead and do is add a new item here and maybe a couple of sub bullets to keep me on track. I thought about making notes to the side, but we're using Notepad++, so that's what I would use to do that. So I'm just going to do it all here. So we want to talk about HTML and a little bit about what it is, and then dive into how to go about HTML tagging and building HTML documents. And so let's just list out things we want to cover. We know HTML already stands for Hypertext Markup Language. We already defined that. So that is what it is. And the hypertext portion of this refers to hyperlinking. And the markup language, of course, refers to the HTML tagging, the marking up or formatting. You can just replace markup with format, and it means the same thing. But there's different parts of the HTML that you have to understand. So let's just list a few things out we're going to want to get into here today. So underneath D, I'm going to add that we're going to talk about some standard elements. And we eventually want to talk about some container elements. And we want to also discuss the concept of attributes. And we may also want to give you a little bit of just a high level understanding of what HTML actually is. What is HTML? Let's ask the question. Let's fix that. Okay, that should get us on track. Beyond that, there's going to be references, and the references are going to probably be obvious as we start to get into them. But I'll just make a note of that so I don't forget to get into that. Okay, so let's just start with what is HTML. And of course, any search engine will help you discover this on your own, but I'm going to break it down for you. So if I go jump out on DuckDuckGo, for example, my default search engine, but you could be using Google, and I search for HTML, that should be pretty much all in frame there, I think. There's ads at the beginning, including Pluralsight for me. And then there is, beyond the ads, you'll actually get a Wikipedia reference to HTML. And you'll also get this W3C Schools is probably one of your first hits about HTML. Let's go into the Wikipedia. So if we jump into Wikipedia for HTML, of course it tells you it's Hypertext Markup Language, and it does describe it as a standard markup language for documents to be displayed in the web browser, because that's what HTML is used for, and the web browser itself, like the page we're in right now, only understands HTML. So the only way this Wikipedia document is being rendered right now in the browser is through HTML. And if I were to right click in here and say I want to inspect this document we have loaded, we would reveal the HTML here that we're reading through right now. So that's, it's highlighting different pieces of it as I'm touching the source, but that's what is rendering this document, is this source here, and that's what HTML is. That's the only thing web browsers understand to be able to visually render out a page to a user. So that's what it's used for. CSS gets mentioned very quickly. I'm going to avoid that topic for now. But what I want you to understand right now is that this is not a programming language. This is a markup or formatting language. So just like when you use a word processor like Word or WordPerfect, they have their own formatting language that you can mark up and format documents in and save them as Word docs or WordPerfect docs for printing or, creating a resume and sharing it with people. That's its own proprietary markup language for those word processors. This is a markup language that's standard for the web. And it's not really proprietary, it's an open standard. So anybody can create HTML in almost anything because it's a clear text markup language. So you can use Notepad or Notepad++ to write all your HTML if you wanted to, but you have to do it by hand. So it's text encoded. So it's very open. And while we're on the topic of markup languages, if you dig into that, you'll understand more that there's a lot more than just HTML around. But I just want to jump in here real quick to show you that HTML is actually has a parent and it has like a sister language. So if you dig deep enough into this, you're going to find that HTML is based on ISO standards. And when we say ISO, we're talking about the International Organization for Standards. That's going to come up when you start getting into technology like HTML. So will the W3C, which is a web standard organization. We'll get into that here in a minute. But this is an ISO standard, and originally the standard is called SGML. This is what the parent is to HTML. So this is a higher level markup language above. So HTML is like a derivative of SGML, just so you understand where it comes from. And SGML also is what's used to create XML. So you can see here, this ISO standard for SGML is extended to HTML and XML. That's why I say they're sisters. More on XML later. It's hard to talk about this stuff in its full context without, referencing CSS, referencing XML, and then cheating and saying, we'll talk about that more in a later lesson, but can't talk about everything in one. So there'll be some hints and foreshadowing. But I just want you to understand that it's a formatting language similar to formatting with XML, but XML is for data, HTML is for formatting web documents, and they're both children of the parent formatting language, SGML. But these are all declared markup languages in their standards. They're not a programming language. They're a formatting or markup language. That's what they are. And that's what HTML is. It's just a markup or formatting language, specifically for web browsers, specifically for web content. That's what it is. Okay, so now that we've kind of broke that down, I'm just going to go back to the search results because we had HTML as our search, and that was one of the first results we got. And that was the first topic that I really wanted to cover was what is it? But to get a better understanding of of what it is and how to use it, we need to start looking at specific HTML elements, or you might also refer to these as tags as you're getting started. So one of the best ways to do that and at the same time give you a good reference to that is to go to W3C Schools. And if for some reason the W3C Schools site didn't come up when you search for HTML, that would be weird, but that's okay. You can just go up to the top here and put in W3 and start putting in school, and it's going to come right up, and it's going to be one of the top hits, W3C Schools. Either way, you can land into the main page, you can land to the HTML page. One of the first pages in the site that you're going to be able to navigate to, however you get there, is going to be HTML. So we all want to end up landing here in W3C Schools on HTML. Let me check my zoom level. Let's bump this up just a little. Okay, so this is a great place to start learning HTML. So let me go ahead and copy this URL here. I recommend you bookmark it or make note of it. I'm going to go ahead and add it to references now. So this is a great reference to have. And if we want to give this a little more structure, let me space this out a little bit. Nope. Messing that up. And there's at least one reference right there. So Why do I say W3 Schools is a great reference? Great place to learn HTML from scratch. They'll just go ahead and start telling you what HTML is and defining it for you and giving you kind of a at your leisure browse through and understand what HTML is and how to use the different tags, and you can just dig deeper and deeper into it. So I want to cover a few of the standard elements. Feel free to browse. So feel free to browse and run through some of this content yourself. Um, but the stuff I want to focus on right now is going to be just the basics. So they start off on the introduction talking about an example document. Now, there is something called a doc type declaration at the top of your HTML document before you start your open and close HTML tags, which does indicate the beginning of the HTML document, the end, right? And that's how the tag structure works. If I open a tag, it's angle bracket, the name of the tag, angle bracket. And if I close a tag, it's angle bracket forward slash whatever the tag name is. And that's the closing indicator of the tag. So by having an open and a close here, that means everything in here is HTML. And then by having an open and closed body, everything in there is the body of the HTML document. So it's very straightforward how the tagging works when it's set up that way. But there is something unique here at the top called a doc type. And then doc type basically declares the type of HTML document you're working with. At this point in time, we're all using bang or exclamation, depending on how you would describe that, doc type HTML, and that's because this is the simple declaration for HTML5. But we have had previous versions of HTML like HTML4 and XHTML. There was a mobile profile HTML format. So there are different HTML doc types you can describe, and that can let the browser, sometimes referred to as the client, understand which version of HTML to render, because you can imagine some of these modern browsers are backwards compatible and they can go back and render versions of 4 or XHTML versions with specific standards and doc types. But this will be the one going forward for right now for 5, so you probably won't deviate from this for a bit. So you can kind of ignore it. After doc type, you are going to see the HTML element. This is the root, as we were talking about, of the page. Open, everything in it's part of the HTML page, close. That's all contained in there. Same concept for the head, but remember the head section, it contains meta information about the HTML page. You're not going to put tags inside of head that you expect to render out on the page. You're going to put more things like title into there, which you're going to see render on the title bar up here. Or data about the page that you're going to see show up on search engines. So when you do a search and you search for content like this, then some of the data here, the title of this page and the data here describing this page is the metadata we're talking about that you could put into the head section. It's not going to be the content that's actually going to render onto the screen, like here in the body, like you're seeing all this content here. That would be in the body, not in the head. So then they go on to describe the body, defines the document's body, like I was just saying, container for all the visible contents. So this is not the metadata. This is the actual content. So headings, paragraphs, images, everything you would think of that you might format for a Word doc or word process doc, we have this equivalent in our markup for HTML so that we can build fully rendered and formatted documents to share content. A common one is header 1 element, doing a large heading on the page, at the top of the page, usually the largest heading on the page, and then you usually have some H2s after that. Paragraph, defining individual paragraphs of text on the page, because you wouldn't want just one big, huge, long, continuous chunk of text. You'd want it to be broken up and formatted. So they begin going through at a very elementary level here, explaining, as I did before, it's angle bracket tag name, angle bracket forward slash tag name, open tag, close tag. Content goes in here. Whatever this tag is, it formats it. So if the tag's an H1, this becomes a heading 1. If it's a P for paragraph, this becomes a paragraph. It's that easy. They're also pointing out, though, hey, look, the H1 has a closing tag. The paragraph has a closing tag. There are going to be some HTML elements that don't have closing tags. Why would you do that? What if you're creating like a line break in a page, which is just going to cause, spacing, a breakup between content? Um, it's not going to contain anything. So a line break isn't going to surround content and turning it into a line break. It's just going to cause a break, like a return line in the page. And so because of that, there's no ending tag. You just create a line break tag, and that's all it does. It doesn't contain text. It just inserts a break there. Okay, so moving forward, if we use this navigation, and you can come back and review some more of these, I'm going to jump into HTML elements because that's one of the topics we wanted to cover here. Is some of the standard HTML element tags, and we're already starting to talk about those. So when you go into elements, they're going to review the H1 paragraph break, and then they're going to start talking about nested elements. So it's important to understand that your body can contain, lots of different HTML elements, and the body is apparent to those. The HTML is apparent to the body. But within the actual content itself, you can also have more nested elements. So they're showing a real simple document here. The body is just going to have one heading in this page and one paragraph, and the heading is going to have some content that says my first heading, and the shocking paragraph has my first paragraph. So they're keeping the content really stupid simple, but they're trying to get you to focus on the tagging. And there's a try it yourself here. This is another thing I like about this site. As you're going to go through and explore some of the different elements, which I recommend you do, you can click try it yourself, and it'll put you into this new tab here. So I still have the document we were looking at in the first tab, but in the second browser tab, I now have the ability to play with this HTML tagging before I move on. So if I want to experiment, I could say, well, my first heading, is that really what's in this element here? Let me take my away and run it. Oh, okay, so I did modify. So let me modify it more and say page heading. Ah, okay, yeah, so that's in that header tag. And the paragraph is here. This is a really short paragraph, so maybe I want to make something more substantial, like this is my first paragraph, if I spell that right, in the page. And it's not enough content to really be a paragraph, so I'll just repeat and rinse. So just copy this text here, and just after a space, paste, space, paste, space, paste, space, paste. Now we're getting very redundant content, but I'm getting more of it into this paragraph tag so that I can show you when I run it. Now we're starting to define what an actual paragraph of content might look like in this document. And if I wanted to see this continue further on, I could copy that paragraph tag and add that to the document. And it's a lie now. This is the second, right? So I'd have a bunch of updates to do because I chose to word it that way. So if I was going to make this second, I guess the quick way to do that would be to just flip all these with a little copy and paste magic. And I get myself out of that hole. Did I get them all? Anyway, you get the idea. And you can sit here and fool around until you're satisfied with, oh yeah, I see how this works. And then close it. And you're back to where you were doing the try yourself. So that's really handy. So another reason why I like to start off at W3C schools for this, or at least have this as a reference. You can use this as a cheat reference to come back for later, even after you've learned the tags you're going to be working with. You might forget one. This could be a good reference for that as well. You'll see a lot of basic elements get covered here, and they have a specific section on paragraphs here. So if you wanted to go like this one here, they had this is another paragraph, so they kind of did what I was doing, but with less content there for this one. Let's see. You cannot be sure how HTML will be displayed, large or small screens on resized windows. That's something to keep in mind. We have CSS frameworks for that to help with display later, like Bootstrap, but we'll cover CSS and how to manage that stuff later. But the browser will try to automatically remove extra spaces and lines with the page is displayed. So what they're pointing out here is if you're creating a paragraph tag, you're not going to be able to do this and just put all of your content spaced out in a tag like this and it respect all these line breaks and spaces. It's going to try to streamline that down to one paragraph, streamline this down to one paragraph. So if you're thinking this is going to result in a very similar format on the page, you're wrong. It's going to look like this. So see, it's not respecting all of that space. It's trying to streamline everything for you. If you actually want things laid out this way, you have to tag it and mark it up to do so appropriately. And there's attributes you can use to do that. There's style you can use to do that. There's other tags you can use to do that. But just simply putting line returns and spaces into a paragraph tag like this. Yeah, so just adding the actual spacing is not really going to get you what you want there. You're going to have to use the HTML tags to format the content. Okay, let's see. They have attributes mentioned in here, which we do want to talk about. See if there's any other examples of tags we want to talk about first. I want to avoid the styles for now. Headings. Okay, it's important to understand headings. Every page should have a few headings. It's even important for how your pages get indexed by search engines, so optimized for search engines. So every page should have a main heading, which is an H1 tag. And then after that, you usually have at least a few H2s to break up the content. But within certain specific pages under a heading 2 section of your content, you might have other subtopics, and that's when you start getting into heading 3s. Heading 4s, 5s, and 6 are probably less common. Commonly, you're going to be using 1 and 2, and maybe 3s. This would be some really complex content if you're getting all the way down to using the 4, 5s, and 6. I wouldn't really worry too much about that right now. But if you want to see these all, expressed and rendered, try it yourself. You can go to town, play with these over here. You can see what we're using. You can see what we're rendering. No shocker, really. Let's see. Anything else in here to cover about headings? They're getting into some attributes here where you can see they're setting a font size on the heading. So they mention CSS, and then they go into style. Not ready to go there yet, so I'm going to ignore that for now. Let's see. What do they have under formatting? Oh, yes. So beyond just creating headings and creating paragraphs, inside your paragraph, you may want to start formatting specific pieces of content, specific words you might want to be bold within that paragraph. That's what the bold tag's for, but strong will do the same. You might want to make things italic, and that's what the I tag for italic tag is for. So you're going to have additional formatting elements that you can simply tag around your content. Here's an example of making this text be bold. And if we try it ourselves, we'll see the first paragraph is just, this is normal. This text is normal. There's nothing bold about it. But all this text in here has been made bold. Now, it doesn't have to be all the text in here. So we could say only this text is bold. Other text here. And other text here. Right? And spacing doesn't matter. So if I wanted to, I could have other text here, and I could have this returned on a line, only this text is bold, and I could start here on the next line and say another text is here, and I could even put the closed paragraph in the last line, so I have it all lined up like this. And if I wanted to really get anal with it, I could put this paragraph on its own line and have it all like this. And if that's how I wanted it readable for me to edit as a web editor, I could do that. When I run it, it doesn't matter. It's going to do what the markup says. The markup says start a paragraph on this first line here. This text is normal. which is what we have in the first paragraph. Then we start the second paragraph, and we have text, and then we have a new tag. And the only thing that bold provides us is making that content bold. So only the text that I have saying only this text is bold in the document because it's the only one contained inside of the bold tag. So the formatting begins here and it ends here. And if I took it away and stripped that formatting out and ran it, you would lose the bold. And if I put it back, you would get the bold back. And if I did something weird, like I didn't close it here, and I started a bold there and didn't close it, which would be malformed HTML, the browser would try to handle that. And the way it's going to do it is, well, he wants this content to be bold. He didn't tell me where to stop. He didn't tell me where to stop. Oh, the paragraph stops here. Tell you what, I'll just let it go bold all the way to this paragraph. And that's what you ended up with. But that's malformed. So you really should be closing that at some point. Even if you wanted all that text to be bold, you should put a closer like there. And then that would do it. So, play with that as you will. If this stuff is starting to sink in, how the formatting works, same concept for italics, by the way. So if you put it in the I tag, it becomes italic. If it's not in italics, it's not italic. I won't spend too much time there. It's pretty obvious. If this stuff is making sense, then the rest of the markups are going to make sense as well. You're just going to have to learn what each of them are and become familiar with them. Comments. Okay, that's something I didn't list out in the notepad, but we definitely want to talk about it. You are going to want the ability to put comments into your HTML code. Here's an example of that. The comments begin with angle bracket, and we call this bang. It's an exclamation point, but if you hear me say bang, that's what I mean. Dash dash, and then that will begin your comment. The way it ends is dash dash angle bracket. If you do this, the browser is not going to try to render that or interpret that as any type of content. It's going to leave it as a comment for the web developer only who's viewing the HTML source. Or I guess anyone viewing the HTML source. Usually that'll be a web developer. So here it is illustrated. This is a comment here on this line. Here's a paragraph, which is in HTML tags to be rendered. And here's another comment, which is not to be rendered. And the comments are tagged appropriately. And so when we render this, guess what? We only see what's in the paragraph. Now, if we took some of this comment stuff, let's see, comments are not displayed in the web browser. If I cut that and I put that inside the paragraph, what's going to happen? Hey, it's still a comment. That's because as soon as it sees this angle bracket, bang, dash, dash, it understands that everything inside of here is a comment. Now, if I copy that and I take the formatting for the comment away and just leave the clear text and run it, of course, that's going to show up as content now because it's not marked as a comment. But anything explicitly marked as a comment is not going to render, even if you put it inside of an element. So, it doesn't matter if it's in bold, if it's in a paragraph, if it's in italic, it's a comment. So it probably shouldn't really be there. Comments are typically reserved for making notes about your code. So if this weren't a paragraph, if it were something else like a table of data, or you were about to put a bunch of JavaScript in that was going to do something, or there was some specific, I don't know, plugin or dynamic piece of content that you needed to call out, you can write whatever notes you needed here. So they're usually used for developer notes about some type of specific web content or script. Sometimes they're even used to delineate different parts of a page, like this is where the navigation structure begins. This is where the navigation ends. This is where this data table starts. You can have all the markup for the data table. This is where the data table ends. They'll make more sense as you start building more complex documents. At the beginning, comments seem useless, and then as you start composing very large structures, you'll find them useful to be able to note inside of the source, okay, this is where this stuff starts and this is where it ends, and you can then jump to that later when you're developing. So they will come into play. Let's see. I do want to get into attributes. So before I get too long-winded here, let's talk about, let's reverse this. Let's talk about containers first and then attributes. That'll make more sense. So do they call containers out explicitly in here? I don't think they call them containers. We've already alluded to the fact that they exist, but I want to explicitly talk about containers. The best example of a container element, as you can see that's described here, is the div element. This is probably the first advanced HTML element that a new web developer will come across and not understand what to do, because the div by itself doesn't really provide any formatting at all. It will provide a line break. So you see here it comes with line breaks before and after. So when you add a div into a document, it does come with these inherited line breaks. Other than that, the only purpose of the div is to contain other elements and become a container for those elements. Why would you want to do that? We're going to show you why. So here they say the div element, by default, a block element, meaning it takes all available width and comes with line breaks before and after. Here's an example of the div. They've got some Latin, lorem ipsum, a starter div, I am a div, a closed div, and then dolor, sit, emit, more Latin. So they just put a sentence here for us, and they put a div in the middle of it. And they explicitly put that content as I am a div so we can see what happens to it. So let's try this ourselves. Okay, this has style implemented. We'll try to ignore that for now, but they have a header here, which we can see here, and they have the Latin that they were illustrating. There's the div, and then here's the rest of the Latin. What happens in the page? Oh, weird. It almost looks like there's 3 paragraphs here, but there's not. There's just this one line, and there's a div inside. So what's happening is the browser is rendering out this line of clear text here, not even contained by a paragraph, really. It's just contained by the body right now. Then they start a div. Well, a div automatically includes a line break, so it jumps to the next line. I am a div. Well, it also contains a closing line break, so it jumps to the next line. And then you have your next piece of content. Um, the yellow is just some style they added to highlight the div. We're going to ignore the style for now. That's not the point of this example. The point is the div. So you might be asking yourself, okay, so the divs come with a line break. Big deal. I could probably do this with a paragraph. Why are we going to use divs again? Again, when a new HTML developer, a new web developer starts working with this, it's not obvious what the power of the container is, and that's why I want to focus on it. So, okay, had a little break there with an audio headset change, but I'm back, and I believe what we were discussing is divs as a container and what we need to understand about the div as a container. And so the key point here is that the div element really formats other elements inside of it. It itself doesn't really bring any formatting to the table other than the included line breaks that are inherited with it. So it's really just a tool to be used to delineate other elements from each other into a group or groups, if you will, and then apply either attributes or style to that group of elements. So let's try this. So they have a group here. They have this parent div or this div container, which I would consider to be a parent to these child elements it now contains. So this div's children are now one header 2 tag, one paragraph tag, and a second paragraph tag. These are its children. We can prove that this container actually works in impacting this entire group of elements by experimenting with attributes on the div. So if we say try ourselves in this new tab here, you can see the code over here for the div and its children, and you can see that represented here. They have it colored in yellow for you or styled in yellow for you. So what we're going to do is set our cursor to the div, which is the parent of this group of elements and the container. And we'll do this. We'll say that we want to change the alignment of these elements. So we could say that we want to align equals, and then in quotes for this is an attribute we're putting in, the align attribute. We'll say to equal center. And so now on this div, we're saying I want to set an alignment attribute. Oh, so it's the attribute's name's align equals. This will be the value I'm going to use for it right now. Is going to be center. And if I run this, then lo and behold, all of these elements, so the header, the paragraph, and the second paragraph, all change their alignment to center, right? That's an example of a container like the div impacting this group of elements. Only had to set that that attribute or property one time. So let's do another one. We'll first take this center here because it doesn't really look ideal that way, and we'll set it to left and see that we can control that, moving the elements back to the left. There we go. And then let's see what else we can control. So if I do a space after this align equals left, I can do a second attribute on the div. I'm just going to do hidden and then run it. Notice I didn't have to set hidden equal to anything. If I just apply the hidden attribute, then the browser interprets that as, oh, this entire group of elements shouldn't be rendered, it should be hidden. And so now they're not being rendered in the page. So notice the yellow is paragraph background is added down here. It should be right in between this content and this header up here, but the entire block's being hidden. Now if we take this attribute away from the parent div container and run it again, lo and behold, our content is now rendered back into the document. So we can control these three elements from this one parent div. If we added hundreds of elements into here, hundreds of more paragraphs and headers and whatever, we could control it all with this one div. So I think you could see you could end up with, you know, groups and groups of different elements. So groups and groups and groups of different elements. We just have to go in and start distinguishing the content, right? And say this will be USA, or actually that was a city, London. I will say this will be, I'll just be ambiguous and say New York. And then down here we could say this will be what, Dublin, and just do it like that. And then we're creating some different content. And then if we want to, you know, impact all of it, well, if we want to impact each group that we have, we created 3 groups. So if we want the second group to be centered, we could do that. And then I think you see where I'm going with this. So, and then for some reason we don't want to see Dublin anymore. And so there you go. Divs controlling entire groups of elements, one group at a time, as you wish. That's the power of the div container. There are other containers to talk about, but if you just focus on that concept for now, div's probably one of the biggest generic containers we'll use. And that kind of covers that part of the lesson we were looking to squash. So I know this one's getting a little long. That was elements and attributes. Oh, and then the reference. I'm not going to get into style in this video. I'm avoiding style for now because it's another separate discussion. But I did want to make sure you knew about the reference to the W3C schools. This is a great place to look up different types of HTML elements and play around with them and understand how they work. It can be used as a pretty good reference as well to those elements. Another popular reference out there, if you start looking at specific things like divs and containers, you'll finally find yourself out to, you'll find your way out to mozilla.org. So let me see if I can just bring that up. HTML div attribute. See if we get there that way. Here we go, developer, mozilla.org. So this is a good one. Let me find a good landing point for this. References HTML. That's probably a pretty good landing point. I can see the elements are over here for me to go dig down into. Body is in here. Yeah, so that's good. One thing we didn't really discuss specifically, I need to get this reference for you bookmarked. So that was a good landing point. And let me make sure we have this as the reference as well. So I'm copying this HTML landing point you see here if you need to pause your video or whatnot, and I'm putting it over here as another key reference. This is just to give you HTML references that will speak to the elements, the attributes, and understanding how the structures work. It occurs to me though we really didn't cover the hyperlink. So let's make sure and explicitly call that out. So I guess right after attributes here, we do need to talk about hyperlinks. And we do need to talk about things like images. So let's just knock both of those out to finish this off. I can't believe I almost forgot to cover it. Hyperlink, the hypertext part of hypertext markup language of HTML is the hyperlink. So what element is that? In case you don't know, it's called the anchor link. It's the A, the anchor. And this is the element that is used for creating hyperlinks. Now you can actually create a link from within a document. You don't have to leave and go to another document. That's typically the default type of hyperlink, is you click on a link within a page and you jump to an entirely new page, either a page on the same site or a page on a completely different website. But you can also do anchor links locally within the page, and maybe we'll dig into how to do that more later. But let's just look at the basic structure of the hyperlink. They're jumping into a try it here real fast. I bet you that W3C does a better one. Let's see here. Elements. Do they have links on their own list? Are they under attributes? Let's see here. I'll find it real quick. Okay, here's one breakdown of the anchor tag. So the anchor tag defines the hyperlink. The href attribute specifies the URL the page the link goes to. So this is the building block of a hyperlink. You have your open anchor tag, you have your close anchor tag, all the normal HTML tagging rules are followed. There's some content inside of here. Oh, so there is text that we're going to mark up. Well, how are we going to mark that text up? We're going to mark it up to become a link. That's the whole point of the anchor. The anchor takes clear text like this text here, visit W3C schools, a little self-promotion, and it transforms it into a link. Don't believe us? Try it yourself. There's the code that we were just looking at. Here's the result. It's a link. And we can play around with this to prove it works. So first, I'll just control click there to get that into a new tab. Let me close this Mozilla we have open. If I didn't control click it, it would have opened it up over here, which is not as helpful. Or you can right click on, say, open a new tab and do it that way, but control clicking does the same. So, and then, yeah, that proves that works, right? So, if I say open new tab, there it is. It's going to that website. Well, how do we know it's not just some trick, Steve? Okay, well, let's change the text. How about we'll change this to visit duck go. Okay, how do we go there? Change the website. duckduckgo.com. And now let's run it. Hey, look, the text now says visit DuckDuckGo. Of course it does. That's what we changed our inner text in our anchor tag to be. But what happens when I click the link? If I open this in a new tab, I just went to duckduckgo.com. So I'm in control of this hyperlink. I can make this go wherever I want. So if I want it to be LinkedIn, then I just need to adjust. Really, the href is the URL you need to adjust, but I'm matching the clear text, so it's not confusing. There we go. And run that, and there it is. And whoops, I didn't. I forgot to open a new tab. Okay, that worked. Now, the href is really what's doing this. So if we leave this href set to LinkedIn.com, but we change this to be like visit AOL or whatever, Of course, the clear text does nothing. The fact that I'm saying it's AOL does nothing. It's the href that's doing it. So if the text says visit AOL, we're still going to whatever URL is in the href because that's where we're sending you. So I can leave it as visit AOL and then change the href again to be Google. And then if we run that, it says visit AOL, but when you go here, you're going to now go to Google. So that is what is driving your links. And this is just the text. And I wonder what happens if you actually try to go to AOL right now. Let's find out. I'm curious. Let's see here. It should resolve to something, right? Run this. Please visit AOL. Okay. And there we go. Yeah, I think Verizon currently owns this, don't they? So AOL.com is like a little portal news site now, I guess. And that's hyperlinks. Definitely need to cover off on that. Also, images. Images are another interesting tag to look at. I think the W3C will cover us here as well. They talk about images. So this is the href we're looking at under HTML attributes. And then they talk about the source attribute. What's a source attribute used for? A source attribute is another type of attribute to become familiar with, for example, with images. So how does the image tag work in HTML? Do you open an image tag and close an image tag? No, you don't. That's why I want to point this tag out, because unlike the anchor, where you are opening and closing an anchor and then the text becomes what your user sees to click on, and that becomes the URL they navigate to. With the image, it's completely different. You're basically saying, hey, I want an image to be inserted at this point in the document where I'm putting this image tag. But I'm not going to contain clear text to turn it into an image, because that's not how images are made. Images are made outside of your web development environment, right? They're made in like an image editor, or someone sends you a set of images, which are files that you want to point your image tags to. There's a lot of different ways you could end up getting these JPEG photos or images, or GIF images, or animated GIF images, or pings, the .png image files as well. Those will all work with the image tag, but the source attribute is what points this image tag to where the image is located. Let's see how they're going to handle this and then try it yourself. They have an image obviously on the server where we're running this example. That's why this works here. So in the same place this page is running, they're able to resolve the source of image girl.jpg, and this is the image of the girl they're talking about. And they're setting a width and a height attribute here. So if you run that, this is the result. If you want to prove that's the case, we could break this image. We could say call it girl and put a Z here and run it, and that'll probably break it. Now I have a broken image because there's no file named that on the server where this is running. So that would mean that you would need a valid file name in order to get the image to render, which we do now. Notice the attributes width and height on this image. We could adjust those. We could say, well, I want to manage the image by its width, but not explicitly by its height. So I'm going to drop height. That's one sheet to do. It'll still render width 500, and now it's relatively doing the height on that as well. But I could now change the width. So let's reduce this to like half, so 250, and run it. And now it's showing the same image but with 250. And if I think that's too small, I can just adjust the attribute. So is it actually changing the size of the image file? No, the image file is still whatever it was, but we're controlling with this image tag how it's rendered in our document. Even though the image is bigger than this width of 300, we're reducing it to that. So I can sort of prove that. Let's see if I can open the image in a new tab. This is what the default image size looks like, because we're just looking at their image there. And then if we wanted to manipulate it further, there's other attributes that can be put on image tags. I think you can control border, for example. I'll make go to border 2 and run that. And so you could probably also get away with alignment. I mean, eventually you'll want to manage these type of projects with style, but this is an older school way of doing it. Or if you're not
If you're not trying to set up a bunch of styles with this image and you just want to do a quick attribute setting on it, alignment might work. Pardon me. So let's go for the center. Oh, failed. Align did not work. So I guess I lied there. That attribute won't work on image. Oh, what the heck? It did that time. Okay, left. Okay, did I misspell center? Weird. Okay, so the align center just doesn't work. You can do left or right. That's inconsistent and funny. So anyway, probably another reason to eventually stick with style. It'll be more exact than some of these attributes are. But in a nutshell, that's the image tag, and the key point there is we're not containing anything. There's no text there's no closing image tag. So the image tag itself is a single tag, and the source is what's driving the content for this tag. Other than that, it'll be attributes like width and height. You might set border. If you start getting into deep property settings, you'll get into style, but avoiding the style topic for now. That's the image tag. Okay, so I think that'll close us out. This is probably a long enough video now, and hopefully I have my whole headset woes sorted out because I bought a brand new Logitech wired headset that I'm using now. So no more wireless, no more signal issues, and also this thing doesn't take batteries. So if it's plugged in and working, it'll just be working. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.